Lots of silly season news today. One fan favorite driver knows exactly where he's going to be racing next year, as well as a few other new hot rumors we have to talk about. And then we're going to talk about the controversy of team orders and whether or not they have a place in NASCAR. We've got a full show ahead. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric and welcome to Out of the Groove. Before we get too far into today's episode, today's video is sponsored by Forney. They've been supporting the show basically since the start of the playoffs almost. They're one of America's longest running family-owned tool, equipment, and accessory product companies. They offer thousands of different awesome metalworking products. If you like to work with your hands, if you're a do-it-yourselfer, this is the company to go check out. Forney Industries is your one-stop shop for all automotive, hardware, do-it-yourself, and industrial needs. So go check them out. And for the third week in a row, they're doing an incredible giveaway on Twitter as well. I'll put the link to that tweet down in the description. This way you can win some more awesome Forney products. They're giving away this awesome protective equipment prize pack. They got welding gloves here, face shield, safety glasses, a respirator, all the works, everything you need. If you're a welder or if you like working with your hands, getting down and dirty into the nitty gritty, this is an awesome prize pack for you. So check out that tweet down below. Very easy to enter that giveaway. Good luck. Hope you guys win it. Give it a shot. And again, a big thank you to Forney Industries for sponsoring Out of the Groove. Couldn't do this show without the support of amazing partners like them. So check them out. So NASCAR's silly season this year has turned out to be way more interesting, way more crazy than I think any of us originally anticipated. I think originally most of us thought that the only controversy might come with whether or not Christopher Bell would go to the 95 or the 20. I feel like that was really the only big story we were focused on for a while there, but now there are a lot of drivers, some young, some old veteran drivers now, that are in completely foreign situations. So before I talk about some of those trendier rumors, let's go ahead and start though by talking about the one confirmed report from this week. Yesterday, Ross Chastain revealed where he will be racing in 2020. Chastain and Colleague Racing revealed that he will be racing their number 10 Xfinity car next year full-time with Nutrien Ag Solutions as the main sponsor for I think 23 of his races next year. This means Colleague next year will have 2 full-time entries with Chastain in the 10 and Justin Haley driving the 11 car. Everything I've seen seems to suggest that this is just a one-year deal for Chastain and Colleague Racing, but this is huge for both sides. Ross Chastain earlier this summer at Daytona got Colleague Racing their first ever win as an organization, so great to see the two of them continuing their partnership moving forward. Now Chastain is currently running for Truck Series points, trying to win a Truck Series championship, but this means that next year he is planning on running for Xfinity Series points. He's going to go for that Xfinity Series championship. He's definitely got a steep hill to climb, especially if someone like Cole Custer stays in Xfinity for another year. I think it's clear he's going to be the favorite. Colleague Racing, those are solid race cars, but still not on the level of Joe Gibbs Racing or Penske or RCR's Xfinity program. So it'll be interesting to see what Ross Chastain can do, kind of the perennial underdog it seems. Let's see what he can do in good but not great equipment. Maybe he can run with the big boys. I think it's not out of the question. So I'm excited to see what Chastain does next year in a full-time points-paying Xfinity season in decent equipment. But now the Xfinity Series is not the end goal for Ross Chastain, so let's talk about what this means for him going forward, because obviously Chastain has his sights set on a competitive Cup Series ride in the not-so-distant future. Chastain has taken the world by storm in the last year. Ever since he got some opportunities with Chip Ganassi in Xfinity last year and made the most of them, he's been on everyone's radar. He's the Melon Man now. He's got this fun backstory. He's got like a WWE persona almost. He's become a fan-favorite driver, the busiest driver in NASCAR. Often he's running 2 or 3 races a weekend, trucks, Xfinity Cup. He's bouncing all over the place, and he's gotten some good opportunities this year. He got that Xfinity win with Colleague Racing. He's been driving for Nice Motorsports in the trucks and has a couple of wins, which I don't think anyone saw that coming. He's known for getting the most out of his equipment. He's pretty much spent his entire NASCAR career in mediocre to bad equipment, and here he is this year. He's got several wins across multiple national series. So Chastain has made a name for himself. So what does this mean? He's on a 1-year deal, it appears, with Colleague Racing for 2020. That likely means he's not going to end up in a top Cup Series ride. I know some rumors suggest maybe he'll be a candidate for that 37 JTG car. If something else shocking happens, maybe Chastain's name could be thrown into consideration. But right now it looks like Chastain is going to focus on Xfinity in 2020, and 2021 is probably the year he's eyeing a Cup Series ride. Let's talk about some of his top options, I think. So there are a lot of possible free agents, a lot of question marks, I'd say, after the year 2020. Not just because that is 2021, it's supposed to be the premiere of the next-gen car, so teams are going to be investing heavily in new race cars. It's going to be a completely different feel, a new look series. So that's one reason that I think there's going to be some changes, but the other reason is there are just some high-profile drivers whose long-term career plans plans seem kind of murky right now. I still think Ross Chastain's best bet in 2021 is getting that number 1 car for Chip Ganassi Racing. Now, Kurt Busch, he's raced there this year. He's still on just a 1-year deal, and he has not yet signed even an extension for 2020 yet. Signs suggest that he might and likely will sign an extension for probably just 1 more year, which means at the end of 2020 we'll be in the same position, except Kurt Busch will be 42 years old, and I think there's a lot of speculation that after 2020, Kurt Busch might be done racing full-time in the Cup Series, and Ross Chastain still has some strong ties to Chip Ganassi Racing from his time in their Xfinity program last year. I think Ross Chastain would be a definite first choice for Chip if that 1 car became available in 2020. So I still think that's probably Chastain's likeliest future Cup Series home. But there are some other options still on the table. Jimmie Johnson, he still has not signed a contract past 2020. He said recently that maybe he's going to try and race longer than that. It sounds more and more likely each day that he's interested in racing past 2020. But if he doesn't, if he decides next year that nope, 2020 is going to be my final season, that 48 car, it's a Chevy. I know Chastain isn't super loyal to any one manufacturer. You know, he doesn't really have strong manufacturer support from anyone specifically, so he doesn't have to stay with Chevy, but that is still a Chevy. That is a Hendrick car. I think Ross Chastain could be a candidate for that 48 car if Jimmie Johnson hangs it up after 2020. And I mentioned JTG Doherty earlier. Their lineup's still very fluid. They don't have a driver for the 37 next year. It sounds likely that Ryan Preece is going to be back in the 47, but is that going to be a long-term deal? Probably not. Probably going to be a year-by-year basis with Ryan Preece. So there's a very real possibility, depending on who they put in that 37 this year, that in 2021, both of those JTG cars could be wide open or could be possible landing spots for Ross Chastain. Those probably aren't the top rides Chastain is looking for, but he can compete in JTG equipment. He could compete for top 10s, and on some tracks maybe could compete for wins. So it wouldn't be a horrible choice for Chastain. If that's all that's available to him, you know, you gotta take what you can get, I guess. But like I said earlier, Chastain is not limited to just Chevy teams. It just so happens that a lot of the Chevy teams are the ones who are the most volatile right now. There's people coming and going crazy. But he could end up in a Roush car. You know, Roush Fenway Racing, they got a Buescher for the 17 next year, but I don't know how long that contract's going to be. Ryan Newman likely will be back in the 6 in 2020, but Ryan Newman's also getting older. I don't know if Ryan Newman's going to be there long term. There could be an opening there at Roush Fenway. You never know. Levine Family Racing, a Toyota team, could look to expand. They're only going to have 1 car next year, but if that goes well, they might look to expand to a 2nd car. And because Chastain is not particularly loyal or tied up by any one team or one manufacturer, I'm just saying, there are other options on the table. But his contract is interesting. Chip Ganassi Racing, I still think, has the closest ties to him because of their success together in that Xfinity car last year. I think his best bet is to get that 1 car whenever Kurt Busch eventually hangs it up or leaves. I think Chastain in 2021 will be with Chip Ganassi Racing, but that's just my opinion. It's still very early, and as we've seen this season with silly season stuff, it's incredibly unpredictable. I mean, 1 month, Jack Roush was saying that Stenhouse was locked up for 2 years. A month later, he's fired Stenhouse. So it's just it's crazy. Things can change just like that. But as far as 2020, we know Chastain will be in a decent Xfinity car and will have a very real shot at running for the championship next year in Xfinity. So that's cool. We'll see if he can lock down a truck championship this year, first and foremost. Now, that's the only confirmed silly season report this week, but we also had this one. Bob Pockrass reported that Clint Bowyer and Stewart Haas Racing will be back together next year on a 1-year deal. So Clint Bowyer through 2020 will still be in that 14 car. That has not been confirmed yet by Bowyer or SHR, at least not at the time that I'm filming this. However, Bob Pockrass, reputable reporter, I tend to believe it's probably true. Sounds like Clint Bowyer will be back with the 14 team next year. 2021 long-term plans still pretty murky there, but good to see Bowyer will have 1 more shot in top equipment to maybe win some more races, maybe contend for a championship. He's still in it right now, technically. This now means that SHR has 3 of its 4 current drivers locked up through next year. Daniel Suarez is still the only one who reportedly does not have a contract yet for next year, but they're working on it. It sounds likely that Suarez will still be in that 41 car next year, but it sounds like they have some meetings in the next couple weeks with sponsors that might dictate his actual future. Cole Custer and his 7 wins this year in Xfinity are still lurking down there looking for one of those top rides. We'll see what happens, but right now it's looking more and more likely that SHR is going to roll out the same lineup they've had this year in 2020, so we'll see what happens. Now, the other silly season rumor, and I've mentioned this a couple times, but JTG Doherty still has that 37 car vacant now that Chris Buescher is going to be going over to Roush Fenway next year. Stenhouse is looking for a ride. Daniel Hemrick is looking for a ride. Those have become the top 2 candidates that I've seen for that 37 car, and according to reports I've read this week, it sounds like Ricky Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is probably the leading candidate to end up in that 37. Which would mean that he and Chris Buescher are basically trading. It'd basically be a trade. It'd be Roush Fenway Racing forcing a trade, I guess, between them and JTG. It'd be kind of weird. Now again, talking about Bob Pockrass, when I was at Talladega the other day, I went to his tweet up that he did before the race, and he was talking a little bit about some of these silly season rumors and things he's heard. He made a funny quip. He mentioned that one of the reasons he thinks Stenhouse is the top candidate over there for JTG Doherty is, he said that even though Ricky might wreck a lot of cars, they won't need those cars anymore past 2020 because the next gen car is coming out in 2021. So who cares if Ricky wrecks a bunch of cars? They're not going to need him anymore anyways. Thought that was funny. I don't know if it means it's actually true though, but yeah, it sounds like Ricky Stenhouse Jr. He is technically a veteran, and it might make sense from JTG Doherty's perspective to kind of put a veteran in there, even if it's just for 1 year, to counter and to kind of mentor or work with another young driver they have there, Ryan Preece. So, a little bit of veteran experience, but a guy with not too much experience might make a good pairing over there for JTG, especially for just 1 year. They don't really have anything to lose. It's a very low-risk move if they opt to go with Ricky Stenhouse Jr. They likely won't have to pay him what Jack Roush was paying him, so I think it might be a pretty good move from JTG Doherty. If they went with Hemrick, Hemrick I think is a solid driver, but he definitely doesn't have the experience Stenhouse does, and the results this year have not been very strong, so I don't know that Hemrick would be a great bet. I think Stenhouse, from who's available right now, probably is the best bet for JTG, but we'll have to wait and see if that one turns out to be true, if Stenhouse does go to the 37. If he does, I think it's just for 1 year with maybe an option to extend, but I would be surprised if it's more than 1 year. I expect just 1 year. Anyway, so that is all these silly season news, silly season updates. Wow, there's a lot happening. Every week I hear a new rumor, I see a new report. This week we already knew Colleague Racing and Chastain were likely to team up for next year, but it's nice to have it finally made official. But yeah, now that we've talked about silly season, let's talk about one of the kind of low-key controversies from this past weekend's race at Talladega. So during the rain delay on Sunday, after they ran those 50 laps or whatever, and then it started raining and they sat around for a couple hours, a bunch of Chevy drivers were reportedly seen going into a building for what appeared to be a sort of secret Chevy driver-only meeting. Now, here's some tweets from Jordan Bianchi, who was kind of seeing it firsthand. Here's the photo he tweeted saying that several Chevy drivers were walking in here: Johnson, Byron, Kurt Busch. And then Bianchi then tweeted after the meeting was over that they asked him what was discussed, and a lot of the drivers, as you can see here, was kind of sarcastic, it looks like. Yeah, Christmas cards. I'm sure that's what they were all secretly meeting about at the Talladega infield. I'm sure that's exactly what was going on there. So this now raises a lot of questions and a lot of suspicions, I'd say, about Chevrolet and manufacturer involvement with that team. Here's a tweet from Nate Ryan saying that Todd Gordon, crew chief for Joey Logano, was monitoring other teams' radios and heard Kyle Larson and Jimmy Johnson, two Chevy drivers, advised to avoid working with Ford driver Logano on Sunday. Now, manufacturer alliances, team alliances like this aren't entirely new to NASCAR super speedway racing. I mean, traditionally, if you're a Ford driver and you have the choice between drafting with another Ford driver or a Toyota driver, and they're kind of equal choices here, typically you go with the Ford driver. That's pretty commonplace, but it sounds like maybe Chevrolet has upped their involvement a little bit, maybe up the stakes a tiny bit when it comes to manufacturer orders. Ford driver Corey LaJoie actually addressed this exact topic on his podcast, the Sunday Money Podcast. Great podcast. Definitely recommend listening to it. It's outstanding. A lot of interesting tidbits over there. But Corey LaJoie had some interesting things to say about this Chevy meeting and what he thought they were telling him.
People were worried or concerned that maybe the manufacturers were calling the shots of how people were going to be racing.
They do.
Wait, what? I thought you told me this is not true.
They are.
So they literally say, like, you better get in line.
See, Ford hasn't got to that point where they have repercussions if you don't do something. Chevy has repercussions. Chevy will they said they'll take away your sim time and they'll take away your company car.
What?
If you happen to push a different manufacturer to the lead and they win.
Are you hearing this?
Ford does not have those.
So that kind of perked my ears up as well when I heard that. The idea that Chevrolet, the manufacturer, is actively discouraging its drivers and actively punishing its drivers for not working with other Chevy drivers at these super speedway races. That seems a little excessive. Now, of course, Corey LaJoie is a Ford driver, but he's in close contact with a lot of other drivers and a lot of people around NASCAR, so I'll take what he says at face value. I'm sure he's saying something that's pretty close to the truth, if not entirely the truth here, but take it with a grain of salt. He is a Ford driver. He did not sit in on that Chevy meeting, but I'm sure he heard firsthand some of what was said. Now, I know on NBC during the rain delay, Dale Jarrett and Kyle Petty both came out very strongly against NASCAR and team orders, that kind of thing, so I kind of want to give my opinion on this whole deal. Do team orders, do manufacturer orders really have a place in NASCAR, or does it hurt the overall racing product? Now, especially if what Corey LaJoie says is remotely true, I am strongly against that. that type of thing. I'm very strongly against some major faceless corporate entity kind of coming down and pulling the strings and telling their drivers, who are actually the ones in these cars going 200 miles an hour in a pack, putting their health on the line. I'm very against them coming down and pulling the strings and making things happen and telling them what they need to do and punishing them if they don't do it. I think that is not the way to go about it. I'm all for, like, if you're an executive at Toyota and you say, hey, Denny Hamlin, if you're in third place and Kyle Busch or Ryan Blaney's in front of you, if you could, please push Kyle Busch to the win. 100% okay with that. 100% okay with manufacturers wanting their drivers to work with the same manufacturer. I'm not really okay with a big team, a big company with a lot of money like Chevrolet actually coming down here and punishing these guys if they don't do what they want them to do. Because in the moment, in a huge race like this where there's thousands of screaming fans, when you're going 200 miles an hour, inches away from each other, where any wrong move can send you flipping into the catch fence, I don't want these drivers having to sit there and think about, oh, what's going to happen if I don't push my teammate to the lead here? What's going to happen if I don't want them thinking about all this types of stuff. I want them to react in the moment to what will help them personally win the race or get the best possible finish. I don't want all these behind the scenes conversations to be running through their head, because that's not interesting for the fans. We can't, as fans watching the race, we don't see, Kyle Larson thinking, should I push Jimmy? Should I not? We don't see that. We do see, however, Kyle Larson make the daring move 3 wide underneath a couple guys to make the pass. That's what we see. So I want drivers to be focusing on those heat of the moment reactions and choices, rather than all these kind of awkward behind the scenes, behind closed door meetings. What was said? What's the repercussions if I do or don't do this behind the scenes? I don't want to be thinking about that, because for fans watching the race, none of that matters. So the idea that Chevrolet, if this is true, if Chevrolet is actually coming in and punishing their drivers for not working together, and if Toyota or even Ford is doing something the same, I don't like that. I think that is definitely bad for NASCAR. It's definitely bad for the racing product here. At the end of the day, most NASCAR fans are not rooting for Chevrolet, this billion-dollar faceless company, this big business. They're not rooting for them. They're rooting for Clint Bowyer, the good old boy personality, big personality who puts his health on the line each week to race 200 miles an hour and make daring moves. That's the person they're rooting for. They could care less what the executive of Chevrolet is thinking about a certain race. They care what Clint Bowyer or Kyle Larson or Chase Elliott. That's what the fans care about. The fans care about those individual personalities, not this big, just blanket corporation. That's definitely the opposite of what NASCAR fans are rooting for and care about. So if what LaJoy says here is true, or if any of that is remotely true, that some of these manufacturers are actually punishing their drivers for not working together the way they want them to work together, I think that's bad for the sport, and I agree with Kyle Petty and Dale Jarrett in this case. I think that's bad for NASCAR. It might be okay in other sports. I know Formula One's a lot more lenient, a lot more team orders there, and some fans like it over there, some fans don't. I know for a fact if NASCAR got to that point where team orders were constantly being thrown out, NASCAR fans would hate it. I just know that. That's just the way it is. I would hate it. I think most NASCAR fans would hate it. So I don't want team orders like what's being speculated about Chevy here to become the norm, even if it's just at these super speedway races. Like last fall at Talladega when the SHR cars all decided to work together. That's one thing. It is all one team specifically. They all are built by the same company, by the same people. Those are the same teammates. And at the end of that race, even they kind of bailed on each other a little bit. They were still racing towards the end of that race. That's one thing. I still don't love it, but that's one thing. I can at least sort of understand that. But the idea that Chevy, who fields like half the cars in the field, is trying to tell the Chevy drivers exactly what to do at all given points, that's a little much. I do not like that. So that's my opinion on team orders in NASCAR, manufacturer orders in NASCAR. But very interesting to see this secret meeting. Don't know exactly what took place. Don't even know exactly what happened. All we know is that Chevy didn't win the race on Monday. So it is what it is. Anyway, y'all, that is my show. That is my episode. I was really excited for this one because I want to talk about the silly season stuff. I wanted to talk about those team order things. There's a lot of interesting stuff that has come out the last couple days. So I was really looking forward to filming this one. Hope y'all enjoyed. Remember, you can follow me on Twitter. You can follow me on Instagram. Those links are down below to continue the conversation over there. And of course, a big thank you to my Patreon supporters. Michael Harrison at You As The Stars, Cameron James, John Koblenz, Jason R. Long, Wesley Donaldson, Isaac Denniston, Mika Suzuki, iFantasyRace.com, TheRacingInsiders.com, Matthew Koulopoulos, Pepe Lucius, Emilio Garcia, Joey DiMicino, Sky Racing Forums, Jeremy Conkling, Bryce Schumacher, Scott McNew, Colton Austin, Bradley Pelletier, and the rest of these incredible Patreon supporters. I couldn't do the show without the support I get from each of you, so I really, really appreciate it. Thank you guys for your continued support. Thank you all so much for watching this episode. Big thank you again to Forney for being a sponsor of Out of the Groove. Remember, you can check out that tweet down in the description so you can go win yourself some awesome Forney products. Definitely go check them out. Huge shout out to them for sponsoring the show. Really means a ton. And I will see you guys very soon. I got my Talladega videos pretty much done being edited, so the next couple days expect part 1, expect part 2. It's gonna be a couple different Talladega videos because I was there all weekend long. Had a lot of things I wanted to show you guys, a lot of cool things that happened. So expect a lot of Talladega videos here in the next couple days. Should have another Out of the Groove up by this weekend. And I'll see you all then. Thanks for the support. See you guys. you guys very, very soon.